Imagine walking through the sun-scorched deserts of ancient Canaan. The year is approximately 2000 BC. The landscape is dotted with warring kingdoms, each vying for supremacy in a world where power is measured by the sword. In this tumultuous time, a figure emerges that challenges our understanding of history itself. This is not a tale of mere mortal kings and priests. This is the story of Melchizedek, a figure so enigmatic that for thousands of years, scholars and theologians have grappled with his true identity. He appears without warning in the biblical narrative, bearing no genealogy, no recorded birth, and no documented death. His titles, King of Righteousness and King of Salem, speak of authority that transcends earthly kingdoms. In the grand tapestry of biblical history, no character stands quite as mysterious yet significant as Melchizedek. His story intertwines with Abraham's triumph and points toward something far greater. The biblical record first mentions Melchizedek in Genesis 14 at a pivotal moment following Abraham's remarkable military victory. What makes this figure extraordinary is not just his sudden appearance, but the profound respect he commands from Abraham himself, the patriarch of faith and father of nations. Consider the significance. Here stands Melchizedek, simultaneously holding two of the most powerful positions in ancient Near Eastern culture, king and high priest. Yet unlike every other priest mentioned in Scripture, his authority doesn't stem from genealogical succession or tribal affiliation. In a text meticulously concerned with family lineages, Melchizedek stands alone, unconnected to any ancestral line. His name itself carries deep meaning in Hebrew, Melech meaning king, and Tzedek meaning righteousness. As king of Salem, widely understood to be ancient Jerusalem, he ruled over what would become the most significant city in biblical history. But it's his role as priest of God Most High that truly sets him apart, serving in this capacity centuries before the establishment of the Levitical priesthood. This combination of royal and priestly authority, coupled with his mysterious origins, makes Melchizedek unique in all of Scripture. The appearance of Melchizedek raises profound questions that resonate through the centuries. Why does Abraham, who received direct promises from God, bow before this priest king? What significance lies in Melchizedek's offering of bread and wine, elements that would later become central to the most sacred Christian ceremony? And perhaps most intriguingly, why does the author of Hebrews declare him to be without father or mother, without genealogy, without beginning of days or end of life? These questions point to a deeper mystery within the biblical narrative. Melchizedek's priesthood appears to transcend the traditional religious systems of ancient Israel, suggesting a divine order that existed before and continues beyond the Levitical priesthood. His story connects the patriarch Abraham to the future Messiah, spanning thousands of years of sacred history and prophecy. The answers to these questions will reveal a pattern that shapes our understanding of divine purpose and authority. In the early 2nd millennium BC, the fertile lands between the great rivers of Mesopotamia and the Mediterranean Sea were a complex web of city-states and emerging empires. Trade routes crisscrossed the region, carrying precious metals, spices, and other valuable commodities. These commercial arteries became the source of constant conflict as various kingdoms sought to control them. The political landscape was dominated by powerful city-states, each with its own ruler, military force, and religious customs. Cities like Babylon, and Damascus stood as centers of power, their influence extending far beyond their walls. These urban centers were more than mere settlements. They were the hearts of ancient civilization, where commerce, religion, and political power intertwined. In this era, kingship was intrinsically linked with divine authority. Rulers claimed legitimacy through their connection to the gods, and many served as both political and religious leaders. The concept of a priest-king was well established, though Melchizedek's particular role would prove unique in recorded history. This was the world Abraham inhabited, a landscape of competing powers, where alliances shifted like desert sands, and where military might often determine the fate of entire regions. The conflict that set the stage for Melchizedek's appearance was a war of unprecedented scale in the region. Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, had established dominion over a vast territory, forcing other kingdoms to pay tribute. For 12 years, 5 kings of the Jordan Valley, including those of Sodom and Gomorrah, submitted to his authority. In the 13th year, they decided to rebel. Chedorlaomer responded by assembling a formidable coalition with 3 other kings, Amraphel of Shinar, Arioch of Elasar, and Tidal of Goim. Their combined forces marched through the region, systematically defeating several peoples along their path: the Rephites, the Zuzites, the Emites, and the Horites. This display of military might demonstrated the overwhelming power of their alliance. The 5 rebellious kings of the Jordan Valley, representing Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Bela, gathered their forces in the valley of Siddim. The ensuing battle proved catastrophic for the rebels. The armies of Sodom and Gomorrah fled in defeat, with many soldiers falling into the valley's tar pits. The victorious coalition plundered the defeated cities, taking both possessions and people captive. Among these captives was Lot, Abraham's nephew, who had chosen to live in Sodom. This personal connection would draw Abraham into a conflict that had previously seemed far removed from his peaceful pastoral life, setting the stage for an extraordinary military campaign and an even more remarkable encounter. Upon receiving news of Lot's capture, Abraham demonstrated remarkable military leadership that belied his status as a nomadic patriarch. With a force of just 318 trained men from his household, he devised a strategy that would overcome the numerical superiority of Chedorlaomer's coalition. Abraham divided his small force and launched a nighttime attack near Damascus. His tactical decision to strike under cover of darkness proved masterful, as it negated the enemy's numerical advantage and created confusion within their ranks. The biblical account records that Abraham's forces pursued the retreating army as far as Hobah, north of Damascus. The success of this military operation was extraordinary in several aspects. First, Abraham's small contingent managed to defeat an army that had previously subdued multiple kingdoms. Second, they successfully recovered all the captives and goods taken from Sodom and the other cities. Third, they accomplished this without suffering any recorded losses. This victory established Abraham as a formidable military figure in the region, demonstrating that his influence extended beyond his role as a wealthy patriarch. The successful rescue operation changed the political dynamics of the entire region, as the previously invincible coalition of Eastern kings had been decisively defeated by a private citizen's household troops. It was in this moment of triumph, as Abraham returned from his victory, that the mysterious figure of Melchizedek would appear, adding spiritual significance to an already remarkable military achievement. In the aftermath of Abraham's decisive victory, the biblical narrative introduces Melchizedek through a remarkable encounter in the valley of Sheva, also known as the King's Valley. The timing and location of this meeting appear carefully orchestrated, occurring at a crucial moment when Abraham was returning from his successful military campaign. The text describes Melchizedek's emergence with notable precision, yet maintains an air of mystery. As the priest-king of Salem approached, he carried with him bread and wine, elements that held both immediate practical value and profound symbolic significance. These provisions, while serving as refreshment for returning warriors, would later be recognized as foreshadowing elements of sacred ceremonies. The historical record presents this meeting with deliberate emphasis on protocol and ceremony. Melchizedek's approach to Abraham demonstrated a precise understanding of both royal and priestly customs of the period. While other kings from the region also came to meet Abraham, including the king of Sodom, the text distinctly elevates Melchizedek's appearance through its careful attention to his titles and actions. This encounter stands unique in biblical literature, marking one of the few instances where Abraham, who regularly communicated with God directly, showed deference to another spiritual authority. The titles attributed to Melchizedek in the biblical account carry profound theological and historical significance. His designation as King of Salem establishes his political authority over what scholars widely recognize as ancient Jerusalem. In the context of ancient Near Eastern governance, Salem's strategic location along major trade routes made it a significant center of regional power and commerce. His second title, Priest of God Most High, El Elyon, indicates a unique spiritual authority. This designation is particularly noteworthy as it precedes the establishment of the Levitical priesthood by several centuries. The term El Elyon represents the supreme deity, demonstrating that Melchizedek's priesthood operated within a monotheistic framework aligned with Abraham's own religious understanding. The combination of these titles, king and priest, creates a distinctive dual authority that was rare in ancient times. While other cultures occasionally combined political and religious leadership, Melchizedek's case stands apart due to the universal nature of his priesthood, which transcended tribal or national boundaries. Most significantly, his name itself functions as a title. Melchizedek combines Melech, king, with Tzedek, righteousness, literally meaning king of righteousness, a designation that implies divine appointment rather than mere hereditary succession. Salem's significance extends far beyond its role as Melchizedek's domain. Located on a strategic plateau between the Mediterranean Sea and the Jordan Valley, the city occupied a crucial position at the crossroads of major ancient trade routes. This location would later establish it as one of the most important cities in biblical history. Archaeological evidence suggests that Salem, later known as Jerusalem, was already a significant settlement during this period. The city's natural defenses, including steep valleys on three sides, made it an ideal location for a royal capital. Its elevated position provided both military advantage and symbolic significance, as ancient peoples often associated height with divine presence. The name Salem itself derives from the Hebrew root meaning peace, creating a meaningful connection with Melchizedek's role as both a king of peace and righteousness. This characteristic of peace stands in stark contrast to the tumultuous political climate of the region during this era. The city's importance would continue to grow throughout biblical history, eventually becoming the capital of David's kingdom and the site of Solomon's temple. This progression from Melchizedek's Salem to the later Jerusalem represents a continuous thread of spiritual and political significance in biblical narrative. Melchizedek's priesthood represents a distinct order that stands apart from all other biblical religious systems. This unique priesthood operated independently of the traditional familial succession that would later characterize the Levitical system. The record indicates that his authority as priest derived directly from divine appointment, rather than hereditary succession or human designation. Several aspects distinguish Melchizedek's priesthood from conventional religious offices of the period. Firstly, his authority transcended geographical and ethnic boundaries, as evidenced by Abraham's recognition of his spiritual position. This universal nature of his priesthood contrasted sharply with the localized religious systems common in the ancient Near East. The ceremonial aspects of Melchizedek's priesthood also merit careful consideration. His presentation of bread and wine suggests a sacrificial system different from the animal sacrifices that would later dominate Israelite worship. This ceremony appears more symbolic and forward-looking, establishing a pattern that would find its ultimate fulfillment in later religious observations. Perhaps most significantly, the absence of any recorded beginning or end to Melchizedek's priestly service suggests an enduring quality to his office. This characteristic becomes particularly important in later biblical interpretation, where his priesthood is described as eternal in nature. The text's deliberate omission of his genealogy serves to emphasize the divine rather than human origin of his authority. The interaction between Melchizedek and Abraham represents a pivotal moment in biblical history, demonstrating a remarkable spiritual hierarchy that transcended conventional authority structures. Upon returning from his military victory, Abraham, who directly communicated with God and held significant wealth and power, demonstrated unprecedented deference to Melchizedek. The encounter began with Melchizedek's blessing of Abraham, a significant act considering Abraham's own status as a bearer of divine blessing. The text records Melchizedek's pronouncement, "Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth." This blessing acknowledged both Abraham's victory and the divine source of his success. Abraham's response proved even more remarkable. He presented Melchizedek with 1/10 of all the spoils from his victory, establishing a precedent for tithing that predated the Mosaic law by centuries. This voluntary offering demonstrated Abraham's recognition of Melchizedek's superior spiritual authority, as giving a tenth was a traditional acknowledgement of leadership and legitimacy in ancient Near Eastern culture. The significance of this interaction extends beyond their immediate encounter. Abraham, who would become the patriarch of the Israelite nation and father of many nations, subordinated himself to Melchizedek's priesthood. This act established a spiritual precedent that would later be referenced to demonstrate the superiority of Melchizedek's priesthood over the Levitical system that emerged through Abraham's descendants. The relationship between Melchizedek's priesthood and the later Levitical system provides essential insights into the progression of biblical religious authority. The Levitical priesthood, established through Moses centuries after Melchizedek, operated under specific regulations and limitations that stood in marked contrast to Melchizedek's priesthood. The Levitical system required strict genealogical qualification. Only descendants of Aaron from the tribe of Levi could serve as priests. This hereditary requirement created a defined but limited priesthood. Death terminated each priest's service, necessitating continuous succession. In contrast, Melchizedek's priesthood existed independently of genealogical credentials, with no recorded beginning or end to his service. The scope of authority between these priesthoods also differed significantly. Levitical priests served specifically within the Israelite community, operating under detailed ceremonial laws and restrictions. Their service centered on the tabernacle and later the temple, with prescribed sacrifices and rituals. Melchizedek's priesthood, however, demonstrated a universal authority that transcended national and ethnic boundaries, as evidenced by his interaction with Abraham. The sacrificial elements of these systems reveal another notable distinction. The Levitical system primarily involved animal sacrifices and grain offerings, with intricate rules governing their presentation. Melchizedek's recorded offering of bread and wine represented a simpler yet symbolically rich ceremony that would later find profound significance in religious practice. Perhaps most significantly, Abraham's offering of a tenth to Melchizedek established a hierarchical relationship that would later be used to demonstrate the superiority of Melchizedek's priesthood. As the book of Hebrews argues, since Levi was still in the loins of Abraham when this tithing occurred, the Levitical priesthood effectively acknowledged the superiority of Melchizedek's order through their ancestors' actions. The significance of Melchizedek extends beyond his encounter with Abraham through a profound prophetic declaration made by King David in Psalm 110. This psalm, widely recognized as messianic in nature, contains a divine oath that establishes an eternal priesthood according to the order of Melchizedek. David's proclamation in Psalm 110:4 states, "The Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek." This declaration carries particular weight given David's position as both king and prophet. The timing of this prophecy proves significant, as it came during the height of the Levitical priesthood's operation, suggesting a future priesthood that would transcend the existing religious system. The use of the phrase, "the Lord has sworn," emphasizes the irreversible nature of this divine appointment. Unlike other administrative decisions that could be altered, this declaration is presented as an immutable divine oath. Furthermore, the specification of forever indicates a priesthood that would not be subject to the limitations of mortality that characterized the Levitical system. The parallels between Melchizedek and Jesus Christ present significant theological connections that illuminate the nature of divine priesthood. These correlations establish a clear pattern that spans the biblical narrative, demonstrating how Melchizedek's priesthood prefigured Christ's eternal ministry. The first significant correlation appears in their combined roles as both king and priest. Melchizedek served as king of Salem and priest of God Most High, while Christ holds the positions of King of Kings and eternal high priest. This dual authority represents a unique combination of spiritual and temporal power that exists outside traditional religious hierarchies. Their respective titles also share meaningful connections. Melchizedek's designation as King of Righteousness and King of Peace directly parallels Christ's role as the Prince of Peace and the embodiment of divine righteousness. Furthermore, the absence of recorded genealogy for Melchizedek mirrors the eternal nature of Christ's priesthood, which transcends human lineage. The ceremonial aspects of their priesthoods demonstrate another significant parallel. Melchizedek's offering of bread and wine foreshadowed the elements Christ would later institute in the Last Supper. This connection suggests a deliberate pattern in divine revelation, where earlier practices anticipate and illuminate later spiritual truths. Most notably, both priesthoods operate independently of the Levitical system, deriving their authority directly from divine appointment rather than hereditary succession. The theological implications of Melchizedek's priesthood and its relationship to Christ's ministry establish fundamental principles about divine authority and redemption. This connection provides essential insights into God's progressive revelation throughout biblical history. The presence of Melchizedek's priesthood before the establishment of the Levitical system demonstrates that God's redemptive plan transcends any single religious institution. This precedent establishes that divine authority can operate outside established religious structures while maintaining perfect legitimacy. The eternal nature of Melchizedek's priesthood, as emphasized in both Old and New Testament texts, reveals a divine intention for permanent rather than temporary mediation between God and humanity. This characteristic finds its ultimate fulfillment in Christ's everlasting priesthood, which provides continuous access to divine grace. The interaction between Melchizedek and Abraham establishes a pattern of blessing that extends beyond ethnic and national boundaries. This universal aspect of Melchizedek's ministry prefigures the global scope of Christ's redemptive work, transcending the limitations of any single cultural or religious tradition. Furthermore, the divine oath concerning this priesthood, as recorded in Psalm 110, indicates its central role in God's redemptive plan. The immutable nature of this oath underscores the permanence and significance of this priestly order in divine administration. Throughout history, scholars and theologians have proposed several significant theories regarding Melchizedek's identity, each supported by different interpretations of biblical texts and historical context. One prominent theory suggests that Melchizedek was Shem, the son of Noah, who according to biblical chronology could have been alive during Abraham's time. Proponents of this view emphasize Shem's position as a righteous patriarch and his potential role in preserving true worship of God after the flood. However, this interpretation encounters difficulty when reconciled with the biblical text emphasis on Melchizedek's absence of genealogy, as Shem's lineage is clearly documented. Another perspective proposes that Melchizedek was a righteous Canaanite king who maintained authentic worship of the true God in a region dominated by paganism. This interpretation aligns with historical evidence of monotheistic beliefs persisting in various forms throughout the ancient Near East. It also accounts for Melchizedek's political position as king of Salem while explaining Abraham's recognition of his spiritual authority. The most historically significant interpretation views Melchizedek as a theophany, a manifestation of divine presence in human form. This understanding emphasizes the unique characteristics attributed to his priesthood and the absence of biographical details that would typically accompany historical figures in biblical narratives. Each of these interpretations contributes to our understanding of Melchizedek's role while highlighting the careful consideration required when examining such significant biblical figures. The historical evidence surrounding Melchizedek emerges from both biblical and extra-biblical sources, providing important context for understanding this significant figure. The primary biblical account in Genesis 14 presents Melchizedek within a detailed historical framework that includes verifiable geographical locations and documented political conflicts of the period. Archaeological findings from ancient Jerusalem, identified as the biblical Salem, confirm the existence of an established urban center during the approximate time of Abraham. Historical records from this period demonstrate that the combination of royal and priestly offices was an established practice in the region, lending credibility to Melchizedek's dual role as king and priest. Contemporary texts from Mesopotamia and Egypt reference similar priest-king figures, establishing that such religious political authority was recognized within the cultural context of the ancient Near East. The practice of offering tribute to priest-kings, as demonstrated in Abraham's interaction with Melchizedek, aligns with documented customs of the period. The historical designation of Jerusalem as a significant religious center predates the Israelite monarchy by several centuries, corresponding with Melchizedek's recorded position as king of Salem. This continuity of religious significance supports the biblical narrative's presentation of Salem as a center of worship of the Most High God. The careful preservation of the Melchizedek narrative through multiple biblical sources, including historical accounts, prophetic writings, and theological treatises, suggests its sustained importance in religious understanding throughout different historical periods. The examination of historical evidence and theological interpretation leads to several definitive conclusions regarding Melchizedek's unique nature and significance. His appearance in biblical narrative demonstrates characteristics that transcend ordinary historical figures while maintaining concrete historical context. The deliberate omission of Melchizedek's genealogical information, particularly notable within a text that meticulously records lineages, indicates his representation of an authority that exists independently of human succession. This characteristic aligns with the text's presentation of his priesthood as eternal in nature. The universal recognition of his authority, exemplified by Abraham's response, establishes Melchizedek's position as transcending typical cultural and religious boundaries of the period. His role combines elements of both temporal and spiritual leadership in a manner that creates a template for understanding divine authority in human context. The enduring impact of Melchizedek's priesthood, evidenced by its reference in later biblical texts, confirms its significance as more than a historical incident. Rather, it represents a divine pattern that illuminates the nature of spiritual authority and mediation between God and humanity, finding its ultimate expression in later religious understanding. The account of Melchizedek provides enduring principles regarding the nature and exercise of leadership in both spiritual and temporal spheres. His example demonstrates how authentic authority operates with both power and humility, offering valuable insights for contemporary leadership understanding. Melchizedek's dual role as king and priest exemplifies the integration of positional and moral authority. His leadership derived not merely from political position, but from a recognized spiritual legitimacy that commanded respect from other powerful figures. This integration of authority sources illustrates how effective leadership transcends mere institutional position. The narrative particularly emphasizes Melchizedek's exercise of authority through blessing rather than dominance. His interaction with Abraham demonstrates leadership that empowers and elevates others rather than diminishing them. This approach represents a model of authority that builds rather than depletes those under its influence. Furthermore, Melchizedek's leadership demonstrates the importance of timing and context in exercising authority. His appearance at a crucial moment in Abraham's journey, following a significant military victory, shows understanding of when intervention and guidance will be most effective and welcome. These principles continue to inform our understanding of how legitimate authority operates in both organizational and spiritual contexts. The principles demonstrated in the Melchizedek narrative maintain significant relevance for contemporary institutional and spiritual leadership. These applications extend across various domains of modern authority and organizational structure. The integration of moral and positional authority illustrated by Melchizedek provides a framework for understanding effective leadership in modern organizations. Contemporary leaders can learn from this model that legitimate authority requires both formal position and moral credibility to achieve lasting influence. Professional relationships benefit from understanding the pattern of blessing and recognition demonstrated in the Melchizedek-Abraham interaction. This model shows how acknowledging and supporting others' achievements strengthens organizational bonds and enhances leadership effectiveness. The voluntary nature of Abraham's response to Melchizedek's blessing illustrates how authentic authority generates willing rather than coerced compliance. In the context of modern institutional structures, Melchizedek's example demonstrates how leadership can transcend traditional organizational boundaries while maintaining legitimate authority. This principle proves particularly relevant in today's interconnected professional environment, where influence often extends beyond formal organizational charts. These applications demonstrate the enduring relevance of ancient leadership principles in addressing contemporary organizational challenges. The Melchizedek narrative continues to exert significant influence on religious, theological, and leadership understanding across multiple traditions. This enduring impact demonstrates the universal relevance of the principles embodied in his priesthood. The theological implications of Melchizedek's priesthood have shaped religious thought regarding divine authority and spiritual leadership throughout history. His example established precedents for understanding how spiritual authority operates independently of institutional structures while maintaining legitimate influence. In the development of leadership theory, the Melchizedek model has contributed to understanding how authority can transcend cultural and organizational boundaries. The integration of spiritual and temporal leadership demonstrated in his role continues to inform discussions about holistic approaches to organizational authority. The pattern of blessing and recognition established in the Melchizedek-Abraham interaction has influenced the development of mentorship and leadership relationships across various traditions. This model demonstrates how authority can be exercised in ways that enhance rather than diminish those under its influence. The lasting significance of this ancient narrative lies in its demonstration of leadership principles that remain relevant despite changing cultural and organizational contexts, providing enduring insights into the nature of authentic authority. The examination of Melchizedek's role in biblical narrative reveals several fundamental principles that maintain significance for both theological understanding and practical leadership application. The convergence of his royal and priestly offices demonstrates a unique model of integrated authority that transcends typical institutional boundaries. The historical context of Melchizedek's appearance, following Abraham's military victory, provides crucial insight into the timing and nature of spiritual authority. His interaction with Abraham established enduring patterns for understanding how legitimate authority operates and is recognized, particularly in his role of blessing, and Abraham's voluntary response of giving a tenth of his possessions. The eternal nature of Melchizedek's priesthood, emphasized through the deliberate omission of genealogical information, establishes a framework for understanding divine authority that operates independently of human succession. This characteristic proves particularly significant in theological interpretation of spiritual authority and divine mediation. The enduring significance of the Melchizedek narrative continues to inform our understanding of spiritual authority and leadership principles. The model established through his priesthood provides valuable insights for addressing contemporary challenges in organizational leadership and spiritual authority. Looking forward, the integration of moral and positional authority demonstrated by Melchizedek remains particularly relevant for developing effective leadership in increasingly complex organizational environments. The principles of blessing and recognition established in his interaction with Abraham offer guidance for building sustainable leadership relationships in modern contexts. The universal nature of Melchizedek's authority provides a framework for understanding how leadership can effectively transcend cultural and organizational boundaries. This aspect becomes increasingly significant in our interconnected global environment, where leadership must often operate across traditional institutional structures. These principles maintain their relevance by addressing fundamental aspects of human organization and authority that persist despite changing social and technological contexts. Understanding the principles exemplified in the Melchizedek narrative invites deeper examination of how authority and leadership operate in both spiritual and organizational contexts. Leaders and organizations would benefit from studying this ancient model of integrated authority that maintains relevance across cultural and temporal boundaries. The enduring impact of Melchizedek's example challenges us to consider how legitimate authority can be exercised in ways that empower and elevate others. This understanding proves particularly valuable in developing leadership approaches that combine formal position with moral authority. We are called to recognize and implement these timeless principles of authentic leadership in our contemporary organizational and spiritual contexts. This concludes the comprehensive analysis of the Melchizedek narrative. Would you like me to review or expand upon any particular section? The entire piece has maintained a formal, structured approach while avoiding speculative elements, focusing instead on historical, theological, and practical leadership principles. Each section builds logically upon the previous ones, creating a coherent examination of this significant biblical figure and his enduring relevance. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of one of the Bible's most intriguing figures. Your engagement makes these deep theological discussions possible and meaningful. If you found value in this analysis, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel for more historical and theological insights. Share this video with friends and family who might appreciate these profound spiritual discussions. Your support through likes and comments helps us continue producing thoughtful content that examines these significant biblical narratives. We particularly welcome your thoughts and perspectives in the comments section below. What aspects of Melchizedek's story resonate most with you? Join our growing community of engaged viewers who seek deeper understanding of biblical truths. Together, we can continue exploring these timeless principles that shape our understanding of faith and leadership.